Hello everyone, welcome to Programming Pool channel and welcome to Learn Java course. In this video we will talk about a new topic which is loops or iteration. We will start with the theory part as usual, then we will move to the coding part. But before we dive into the concepts, don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you'll support the channel and you will not miss any upcoming videos. What are loops? Loops is a feature in Java to execute a part of the program repeatedly if a given condition evaluates to true. On the other words, loops are used to repeat a segment of code until a certain condition is met. So what that means, when the given condition is true, the loop start looping and the code will start running or executing repeatedly until the condition evaluates to false. Then the loops will stop and exit the code. Loop types in Java. There are four main loop types in Java: while loop, do while loop, for loop, and for each loop structure that can be used with the data structures, such as an arrays or lists. And I'm going to talk about the three loops: one, two, three, while loop, do while loop, for loop in this video. And the next video, when we talk about arrays, I will talk about for each loops. All right. Loop situations. So we have two loop situations when it is indeterminate or determinate. What indeterminate situation means? It means a loop situation when you don't know in advance how many times we have to repeat the code. Better choice is to use while or do while loops in this situation. Determinate situation is where you know ahead of time exactly how many iteration your loop body code has to iterate. So in this case, the better option is the for loop, right? While loop syntax. In while loop, the condition is checked first, then run the code. The syntax is while brackets condition, or like the Boolean condition. If it evaluates to true, then the while loop will execute, then the code. And this while loop will be running until the condition changes to false. All right. Note, in the code section, you need to add code eventually will change the condition to terminate the loop or will repeat infinitely. What does it mean? Your code eventually it has to change the condition to false, so the while loop will terminate, or you will have a situation called infinite loop, and your program will eventually will break or because of running out of memory. Okay, so be careful with that, and that very common error in a programming world. While loop example: int number, which is a variable value of 1, while in the bracket we put while number is less than 5, do this block of code, and we are changing or incrementing the number by 1 each time the loop iterates. Eventually, when we'll iterate like 5 times or like 4 times, because it starts from 1, and once it turns to 5, number is 5, evaluate to 5, then the here the condition is false and the while loop will terminate. Okay. Do while loop syntax. In this type of loop, the code will execute at least once before checking the condition. Okay, so the block of code do will execute, then that will check the condition. And the syntax is do here, the curly brackets, then while, and the condition here. All right. Example for do while code: int number, assign it number value of 1, do number plus 1. So in this case, the value of number is 2. Okay. So the iteration then will check if number which is a value has 2, it will check if it is less than 5, and then we'll keep incrementing until the number is equal to 5, then it will terminate. For loop syntax. So the for loop syntax is for in the brackets, expression 1, you see, is semicolon here, expression 2 with a semicolon here, expression 3 with no semicolon. Don't put semicolon here because it will throw an error. And then the block of code. Expression 1 declares and initializes the loop control variable or loop counter. Some texts call this the initialization section. This part of the loop header runs just once at the start of the loop. So this expression will be initialized, or like we are have a variable here to initialize, and it will done only one time. Okay. Expression is the loop continuous condition expression. It is re-evaluated after each iteration of the loop. So the counter of the loop counter is the expression 2. Once this expression evaluates to false, then the loop will terminate. Okay? Expression 3 is the loop counter adjustment expression. Some call it as action after each iteration. It is the last action done in an iteration of the body before the code loops back to check the loop counter, continuous counter again. And what does it mean? So when the expression 2 is evaluated to true, then the code will be executed. Then we will go to expression 3 and execute it. Okay. For example, for brackets int counter, assign it a value of 0. So this is the first expression. Then counter is less than 5, which is the second expression, checking each time or each iteration the counter value is less than 5. And then the third expression, which is counter plus plus, which is incrementing the counter by 1. System println will print the counter. Now, how this will work? So in the first iteration, this expression will happen and will be only one time at the first iteration. Then it will check the counter that is less than 5. Then the code will be executed. After that, the third expression will be executed and the counter will be incremented to by 1. Okay? Some loop keywords. We have some loops keywords such as break, continue, break keyword usage. In a for loop, in the following for loop that we have, and I assign it a value of 1, then it's less than 10 incremented by 1 here. If I equals 3, then break. The loop will keep executing until I equals to 3, then it will execute the break. And once we execute the break, the loop will be completely terminated and we will exit the loop. All right. Continue keyword usage. We have same case as previously, but we put instead of break continue. Now in this case, I equals 3, then the continue will execute. What will happen is any code that is after the if statement will not be executed, and the code will return to the loop, will increment the counter here, and then will check again I is less than 10. So it will not print anything here. But if you have a code before the if statement, it will execute. If you want in this condition when I equals to 3, nothing from your code to execute, then you will have to put it after the if statement. Let's do some coding. Now open Learn Java project and we'll start with first loop example, which is while loop. Okay, create integer variable, call it number, assign it a value of 1. Now let's start typing the while loop syntax. While brackets number is smaller than 5. Okay, and now the curly brackets that will surround the the code that will be repeated. Let's print the number to the console and plus number. And as we mentioned, we should not forget we will increment the number by 1 each time the loop will iterate. Let's run the code. So 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Now, when the number equals 5, then it will make the expression to false. Now, as we mentioned, while loops, the first thing will happen is to check the expression. Okay, now let's put the expression to make it false by purpose. See, now run the code again. So you can see nothing printed to the console. That means the while loop is checking first the expression, then if it's true, it will iterate. If it is false, it will not run and ignore and go to the next line. Another thing to mention that if I remove incrementing the number, all right, let me give it back to what it was. Now I remove the incrementing of number, so this expression will be always true. Now let me run the code, what will happen? So the while loop will keep running to infinite. And this is the situation where we have infinite loop and will run until the computer will be run out of memory and they will be terminated or at some point will be terminated. Okay, when your program crashes or like run out of memory or so, it's terminated by pressing to the red button. All right, now we are done while loop. Let's comment it out and move on to the next example, which is for do while loop. Right, so the syntax is do brackets or curly brackets. At the second bracket, we'll put while brackets number is smaller than 5. And don't forget to put semicolon here. Okay? Let's print out the same statement and increment the number by 1. Run the code again. 1, 2, 3, 4, the same output. Now, what is the difference here? Let's put the expression by purpose to false. Let's see what will happen. Run the code. You can see now the loop is running at least one time, then it will check the condition if it's true or false. So if it's true, it will continue to iterate. If it's false, it will terminate. But at least it ran one time. Okay, and this is the main difference between while and do while loop. All right, now let's comment out the do while loop and move on to the last loop type, which is for loop. For loop. So the syntax is for brackets int index, assign it to 0, index is smaller than 10, semicolon, now index plus plus. Increment the index by 1. Now put the brackets to surround the code. Just to mention a lot of common mistakes that they put a semicolon here by mistake maybe. Pay attention to that. You can see there is nothing showing you that there is an error, and even if you run the program, it will run without any issues. But the loop actually is not running. All right, it's not doing anything. So make sure that you will not by mistake put a semicolon. And the last expression doesn't have a semicolon here. Okay, if you put a semicolon here, it will throw an error. It shows you, okay, expected a bracket, not a semicolon. So let's print to the console index plus index. All right, now let's run the code. So you can see now it started from 0 till 9, and once the index is becoming 10, the expression is false and it's terminating. Another thing to mention that index or initializing index uh, is happening one time at the beginning and then it will not initialize again. There is another way to do create index is int index. Okay, you don't have to assign it to anything, then assign it in the loop. It will run the same as what happened before. Okay, now we can create infinite loop with a for loop by removing all the expressions here. Okay, now let's remove it, run the code. Now you're having infinite loop. All right, it's worth to mention. You can terminate it by pressing on that button. Let's go back onto the previous code. Now let's give an example for two keywords, break and continue. Here we will put if index equals 3, put the brackets, break. Okay, let's run the code. Here we go. Now we can see the loop iterates 3 times and then it will break. Once the index is 3, then it will break and will terminate the loop. Let's use the second keyword, which is continue. Run the code again. You see now it runs 9 times. It skipped where the index equals to 3. You see 0, 1, 2. There is no 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. As I mentioned in the slides, if you want your code to not run or to be skipped when the index equals 3, you should put all the code after the if statement. If you put any code before the if statement here, that doesn't make any difference. So the code will run anyway. Okay, here we go. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So the index is printing. Okay, so again, if you want to skip all the code from running when the index is 3, you have to put all your code after the if statement. Okay, again here 0, 1, 2, and 3 is skipped. With continue example, we are done with the lesson for this video. In the next video, I'll talk about very important data structure, which is an arrays. So don't miss that. Thank you for watching. See you next video.